Welcome to the Home Business Podcast with Richard Captain Henderson, publisher of Home Business Magazine, and Sherilyn Colleen, managing editor. This how-to show helps you successfully operate your home-based business.
Greetings and welcome to the Home Business Podcast. I'm Richard Captain Henderson, your skipper at Home Business TV.
Hey, I'm Lynn, your co-host.
Let's gear for C and get underway. Home-based businesses are disproportionately impacted by data breaches.
According to our next guest, more than half of small and medium-sized businesses incurred a data breach in the past year. Unfortunately, 60% of SMBs that experience a data breach will go out of business within 6 months.
And 81% of consumers will stop interacting with a brand online after a data breach, depriving a home-based business of customers during that recovery process.
Cybersecurity is a bottom-line issue, and getting this right can be the difference between a flourishing business and bankruptcy. Home-based businesses can succeed at data security in 2020.
To help us win that cyber fight, we are joined today by Eli Sutton with TerraMind, who brings over 15 years experience in data loss prevention.
So hello, Eli Sutton. Welcome to our show. How's it going?
Hello. Good, thank you. Pleasure to meet you guys.
So you're great. Thanks for dialing in, and you're dialing in from Miami.
That's correct.
How's Miami doing? I guess you're still celebrating that football victory. So
yeah, doing good.
Good. Well, thanks for connecting in.
Eli,
Sure.
What makes SMBs, including home-based businesses, a target for data security breaches and other cyber issues?
So unfortunately for SMBs, many factors make them a target, and many of these factors are way more devastating for an SMB simply because they cannot weather the financial storm of a data breach. A $5 million slap in the head to, say, an enterprise corporation is like a speeding ticket, whereas $5 million to an SMB is a death sentence. So factors that make them vulnerable can include things like the type of training you offer your employees. Because remember, roughly 60% of insider threats arise from non-malicious user actions, or what is referred to in the industry as the human error. So if you're not providing them with the proper training or proper guidance, a small mistake on their part can cause catastrophic financial implications to an SMB.
So like a home business, they might not have actual employees in their place, or they might have employees they're working with direct, but they could be working with independent contractors, and they put together a team that way, and they're sharing data, and they could end up being just as vulnerable as a small corporation somewhere that's office based. I mean, you could have the same threats.
Exactly correct. Another very common factor could be something as simple as, say, organizational culture. So lack of culture leads to this herding process in the workforce, which ultimately produces an environment where employees will be prone to become disgruntled. Disgruntled employees make impulsive decisions, most of which are not in your favor. In extreme case, your hiring process, poor hiring or lack thereof, can lead to a world of problems. So you're either hiring the wrong people or you're letting the wolves through the gates. But the most prominent factor that makes an SMB vulnerable to security threats is, without a doubt, lack of designated financial resources for managerial oversight.
Let's go into that a little bit more. How do limited financial resources for security and other technologies make small businesses and home businesses particularly more vulnerable?
Right. So I've had many conversations with business owners in the past who looked at monitoring solutions to either optimize workforce productivity or gain some insight on insider threats. Now, many of them choose not to move forward because they don't fully understand the overall value. They look at a solution like TerraMind as a nice to have, but not operational necessity until they suffer a data breach. Now, at that point, they're ready to pay any and all costs to get covered.
Isn't that funny? They'll pay I got to pay $500,000 to recover my data. Well, a small fraction of that with some prevention would have kept you out of that boat to begin with.
Exactly. Now, as you said, the problem with that mentality is the damage is already done. It's like going out and trying to get health insurance after you've been diagnosed with a terminal illness. So there's only so much that can be done after the fact. It's very hard to bounce back from a data breach as an SMB. You'll read articles that state that nearly half of SMBs that suffer a data breach go out of business within the first 6 months of the actual event. The truth of the matter is they go out of business overnight. That 6 months is just them bleeding away until there's nothing left to bleed. So As a business owner, you have to understand that some things are beyond your reach. You can be super successful, you could be the best CEO to ever walk the face of the earth, but what you can't do is be everywhere at once. Terramind, however, can. And that's the value that we offer our customers. A watchdog that sits and evaluates user actions, reports on them, and provides immediate alerts to keep you in the know, and most importantly, can limit or block actions that can lead to unwanted harm.
So the bottom line here is no matter how large or small your business is, you've got to plan on an investment into security. You can't, you have to have some kind of a security mindset with prevention. You can't just wait till there's a threat that hits and then start trying to configure your systems for protection at that point. You've got to be upfront about this.
Right. You'd have a conversation with business owners, say a room full of business owners, you ask them what they're doing to prevent external security threats, and they'll all give you a laundry list of things that they actually have in place. When you ask those same business owners what they have in place for internal security threats, everybody goes silent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we know that the threat is growing. Eli, what can small businesses expect in 2020 in terms of cybersecurity threats?
So as technology evolves, the threats associated with those technologies make their way into the workforce. In the 70s and 80s, the most common way to steal data was physically taking the data outside the organization, like a pamphlet of papers. Now, in the 90s, the workforce was introduced to personal computers, and email was a common route to steal data. Then you have Hollywood, who introduced us to USBs, like in the show 24. You have James Bond snapping photos with a miniature camera. You have endless instant messengers like Skype, WhatsApp, Slack, Telegram, all of which allow for attaching documentation and is generally overlooked in the workforce as a threat. Cloud shares like Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive. Now, how does all of this tie into 2020? The rise of remote employment. So technology today has provided us with the means of hiring remote employees to reduce operational costs.
Which is big for home-based businesses, because that's traditionally the way they grow is through bringing people in remotely.
Exactly. Now, the problem here is in doing so, we essentially ignored everything we learned over the years in building a secure environment. Now, don't think for a second that I'm against remote employment. In fact, Terramind was originally founded to provide businesses with a means to manage remote employees. But going the route of hiring remote employees without a solution like Terramind in place is like driving to the office with blinders. So yeah, you can make that drive, you make that drive every day. You probably boast to your friends that you can do it with your eyes closed, but at the end of the day, the reality is you'll barely make it out of your driveway.
So, when somebody's like, say, connecting in as a remote employee and you've got, a small business server and you've connected them in, is there anything in that connection, that actual internet tunnel connection that comes into the server, can that bring some threats in that you need to be, because that would be like a common area that small business owners would have to deal with remote employees, that actual internet connection, the security of that.
Yeah, so a lot of organizations take the route of, say, for example, you're going to be working remotely. We'll provide you access to, say, a terminal server or a session host, and then you work out of that session host. Now, the problem is, depending on who may be employed, where they may be working for, somebody who has access to their endpoint can actually essentially act as that person and then have access to all those resources. So you'd have to essentially designate or limit the IP address, where they can VPN from, and things of that nature. So that is a common threat as well. So even in a scenario where you say, okay, I'm going to make sure that they only have access to specific things on their terminal server or the session host, you have to make sure that the person dialing in is the correct person.
Yeah, then you forget, you get lax about it. You just kind of default to access everything, and then the next thing you know, you've got to set some protocols up ahead of time. But so the threat is growing. But when you have these problems and you have these threats, you might not even recognize that you have a cyber problem. What is an easily overlooked threat by many small businesses?
For the most part, human error. So when you hear the term insider threat, the first thing that comes to mind is some guy in a long overcoat with a fedora cap running around trying to steal your data. The reality is, I'm an insider threat. You're an insider threat. She's an insider threat. We're all regular people with good intentions who are prone to making mistakes. Unfortunately, that makes us an insider threat. So again, while I have good intentions and I wouldn't dream of maliciously causing harm to my organization, the reality is I'm human and I'm prone to making those mistakes. Now, this doesn't mean that there is nothing that can be done and you should just let your employees go about their day causing harm until your business goes belly up. You employ a solution like Terramine to build fences around these mistakes and have the Terramine agent take action to limit or block the action from being executed in real time, while educating the user via warning message as to why the action is being blocked. So it's not just about creating fences around user actions, but also educating your employees on proper procedures and corporate policy for future reference.
So a key lesson learned there is as a business owner or a partner, you may be making a mistake, an error that opens you up to a threat, and you might not even know it.
Exactly.
Just through human error. Okay.
Exactly.
Well, Eli, what are some steps a home business owner can take to defend a business from cyber threats?
So to essentially understand where there are vulnerabilities. So every business, every different industry has their vulnerabilities. So you essentially have to understand your industry, understand your business enough to understand where those vulnerabilities might be, and then take steps to ensure those vulnerabilities are essentially being covered. So, for example, somebody who may be working in healthcare will have different vulnerabilities than somebody who may be working in, say, e-commerce. So the first part is to essentially understand what your vulnerabilities are, what they look like, and then employ a solution like Terramine to essentially create those fences and prevent that harm.
I like that. It's all about, building fences. Let's talk a little bit about, those fences a little more with particular software or technologies that you can use to help secure a business. Say, you can't actually afford an outside monitoring service like Terramine. What are, before you move into that solution, what are some other things a smaller business can do with software technologies to help secure themselves from these threats?
Sure. So the beauty of a solution like Terramine is you can essentially subscribe to different packages that essentially fall within your scope. So for example, there are many businesses that only use Terramine for session recording. That way they have a means to understand what may have happened if an event occurred. So example, with session recording, it's not so much that Terramine is acting as a watchdog, but if an event occurred, you have a means to track back and essentially understand how the user got to the point or how the event got to the point where that information may have been compromised, and then you can learn from that. You can set up just the reporting itself, so that's a different package that has the session recording and just reporting, once again, to provide you with hindsight on previous actions, and then once again, learn from those mistakes. So of course, in every industry, it's okay to make mistakes. We're human. That's part of life. But what's not okay is not learning from those mistakes. So if you don't learn from them, you're prone to repeating them over and over.
So you can start off with some basic security and then learn what's going on, get familiar, and then you build from there as your business grows or you discover additional threats that you need to protect.
Exactly. You don't have to go full-fledged DLP. You can just get the basic understanding to make sure that you create proper security procedures. And then once you get to the point where all of that is there, you understand that, you've implemented that, then you can actually go a step beyond and go into full-fledged DLP. But, building blocks, start small, reach up. If you go 0 to 100, you're bound to crash.
Done that before.
So in addition to security technologies, how does communication play a critical factor in mitigating these threats?
Absolutely crucial. So again, for the most part, 60% of threats are going to come from employees who just don't know better. So if we as management don't educate them, then they'll just continue making the same mistake over and over. So it may not cause catastrophic financial implications on the first hit, but you really don't want to be playing Russian roulette with your business. Mm-hmm. Solutions like Terramine, once again, will provide you with the ability to get reporting, managerial alerts, and act as a watchdog to prevent that unwanted harm. As leadership, it's your duty to relay your findings to your employees to make course corrections. So at the end of the day, the goal is not to micromanage your employees, but provide them with direction. So a lot of people unfamiliar with the industry hear the term employee monitoring, and they think it's just a tool to spy on employees, which of course,
what are they doing on Instagram today?
Right. Yeah. What's going on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it may be. But trust me, your employer has better things to do with his time than just spy on you. Like 90% of businesses out there, you were hired with one goal alone, to assist in turning a profit. As leadership, if we don't have the tools to understand where you need to make those course corrections, your profits will be minimal or just stagnant. So reporting provided by Terramind allows for a channel of communication between the employer and the employee. And most of the time, you're not going to be called into the office to hear complaints about why you're not as productive as you should be, but what management can do to make you more productive. So what tools and resources they can invest in, what guidance they can provide. And at the end of the day, that will lead to the company investing more money into their employees, which will in turn be more productive and turn a higher profit rate.
And so like for the business owner, a lesson learned here is that, say you bring people in, you're working with somebody as a contractor and some kind of a joint venture. You got to remember, it's not just about explaining the work that you want them to do or how they're going to assist your business in growing. You've also got to include data security and make that part of the discussion with everybody you work with.
Right. A lot of people who come into any particular industry may understand the tasks associated with whatever it is they're supposed to be doing, but they don't understand the risks involved with particular actions. So for example, if I'm a new employee coming into the organization working in sales, I don't really know what's going on in IT. I don't really know what's a security risk based on the types of things that I do. So for example, I pick up the phone, take a customer's credit card information, whatever it may be, write it down on a piece of paper, punch it into notes, type it into my phone for whatever reason, just so I have it on hand. Not that I want to be malicious, but I have no idea what's going on with that information. I don't know who's looking where. So once again, somebody who just comes into the organization, has his particular tasks, is not always aware of what's considered a threat to any organization. So
they know just enough to be dangerous.
Right. All it takes is something really small and then.
Oh, yeah. Lesson learned from the Navy. Little things like that can end up sinking a ship. Well, Eli Sutton, this has been a great discussion on protecting our business from cyber threats. Do you have any final points you would like to share?
Just be aware of what's out there. So as mentioned, the scary part of these things is how the threats evolve based on technology. So as new things come about, you can't just be like, okay, I have all the steps that I've taken, my business is secured from top to bottom. You're going to have to revisit that over time. So as new technology comes about, you have to revisit your security and see, okay, how is this going to essentially affect the current security procedures that I have in place?
Think about data security every day.
Exactly.
Eli Sutton, thank you for being such a wonderful guest on our show.
Sure. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. It's my pleasure.
Yes, thank you. To learn more about Eli Sutton and his company, visit www.terramind.co or our podcast website for more information on guests.
Thanks for joining us in this episode of the Home Business Podcast. Share your feedback with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and at our website, homebusinessmag.com.
Visit the website for information on advertising, subscribe to our newsletter. Please visit our sponsors. For more information, visit homebusinessmag.com or the expo at homebusinessexpo.com.
I'm Richard Captain Henderson saying, anchors away.
We'll talk with you soon. Until then,
make it a great home-based biz day.